Hello, and welcome to the next video in our Intro to Web Dev, Intro to Creative Web Dev series. So hopefully at this point you have your HTML editor set up. I'm going to use Replit over here, but you can use whatever you want. But I'm going to use Replit. So this video is going to introduce like what just happened when you ran the HTML in your editor, and how you can build on that to make sort of more involved websites. So before I talk about like the code itself, let's maybe talk about like web pages in general. So web pages are a bunch of content. You can think of it that way. And that content can be a bunch of different kinds of things. So as a sort of thought exercise, I encourage you to like think about the kinds of content that you can see like right now, either on this video or on this page or whatever. So for example, I'm just going to look at the page I already have up in front of me. I see like some big text, which might be like headings or something. They are links, so if I click on them, I'll go to a different web page. Up here I see an image. Here I see like this line. That's maybe some content. If I scroll through here, then here's a heading, and then maybe some paragraphs that are just kind of normal font. This is some kind of bulleted list. And then over here's some more images. Maybe down here's another image. If I scroll around, I have things like, I don't know, code editors, and down here's like a footer. So there's all kinds of different kinds of content, and I would encourage you to maybe just take a second to think about like what kinds of content have you seen in various web pages that you've used just in your everyday life. So that's kind of content at a very high level. The next thing I want to talk about is this concept of markup. And markup is a way to communicate how a piece of content should be formatted, or what type of information a piece of content is meant to be portraying. So you can think of markup like exactly like think of the actual word markup, and it's an older word. It's not necessarily a computer science word. It's, say you hand in a paper and that paper is graded, and your teacher might like circle things with like a red pen or something, and the marks that the teacher leaves with the red pen, they aren't part of the original content, but they maybe provide more information about the content. So maybe they circle something that's wrong, or let's be more positive about it. Maybe they circle something that's like, you did a really good job explaining something in your paper, and so they circle it and they say, great job. That's a form of markup in the real world. So kind of pivoting to the computer world, markup is a way to format text. And there's not just one way to do it. There's actually many different ways to mark up like text for a computer. So here's a big old list, but one that you might have seen that's pretty popular nowadays is it's actually called Markdown, which is maybe a confusing name because Markdown is a way to mark up text, which is goofy, but that's what it's called, so that's fine. But what that is, if you haven't seen it before, is I can type some content like, this is some text, and okay, so far I haven't actually added any markdown, which again is markup. So it just renders as some regular old text, but let me add like, this is some bold text, and I want to actually make that bold by marking up the content. So let me add 2 asterisks around it. And you see that on the left, my input, my content contains this like markup, which isn't actually part of the content, but it communicates some extra information. So in this case, the browser or the Markdown editor here converts any word that is between two asterisks to be actually bold when you show it. I can also do things like mark up some text to be a heading. So in Markdown, that's a single like pound symbol. So you see that the source here, the Markdown, contains this symbol, which is not actually part of the content. What it's doing is communicating, hey, this means something. In this case, it means that this is a heading, and you should show it in this really large font. So that's at a very general level the idea of markup. So you add symbols to your content to communicate extra information about that content. Don't pay too close attention to like markup because we're not actually going to use it, but we are going to use a different markup language called HTML. HTML is hypertext markup language, so that's what HTML stands for. But it's a way to add markup to content to indicate extra information about that content. So let me jump over to the editor that I would have set up in like the previous video. So that's over here. Again, I'm using Replit. So if I run this, you see that the source content contains some extra stuff. So anything between like these angle brackets is an HTML tag, which is how you mark up your content in HTML. So notice, for example, like this H1 here, it says H1 hello world and then /H1. That's not actually rendered over here in the web page because it's markup. It's not actually part of the actual content. The purpose of this H1 tag is to communicate to the browser what this content is. So in this case, the H1 tag is telling the browser that this hello world content is a heading. So these are called HTML tags because they sort of tag the content. And the way that works, let me maybe just kind of zoom in on one, this hello world part. So pay attention, I can't really zoom in much more. Pay attention to this line where what I have is an H1 opening HTML tag, which is the sort of less than symbol, so an angle bracket, the less than symbol, and then the name of the tag, so in this case it's H1, and then a greater than symbol, which is like another angle bracket. And then I have the content itself, in this case it's hello world, and then I have a closing HTML tag, which is pretty similar to the opening HTML tag, except it has this extra slash in it. So it's a less than symbol, and then a slash, and then an H1, the name of the tag, and then another angle bracket. And this is a way to tell the browser, starting here, this is a heading, and then here's the heading, and then ending here, it's not a heading anymore. So if I put some more content like right here, and then I run it again, you'll see that the here is not included in the heading itself because it's after that H1 closing tag. So that's HTML tags in a nutshell. From here, the real task is finding more information about what tags you can use. So I'll start maybe just by kind of highlighting a few tags that I've used in the code I gave you. Oops. So for example, this doc type HTML tag, I'll call it, this is a way to communicate to your browser that like, hey, the rest of this document is going to be HTML. So start looking for HTML. And similarly, I guess, the HTML tag itself is like the top level tag that everything else will go sort of inside of. and that indicates to your browser like, hey, here's the HTML. The head tag will contain anything that you don't actually want to see in the page itself, but contains like information about the page. So to see what I mean by that, let's go here. I'll open up like the actual web page that this creates, and notice that this title is my first web page, and that doesn't actually show up in the body here, down here in the browser itself, but it does show up in the tab. So that's up here, my first web page. So title is a way to communicate to the browser what should show up in the tab, but there are other kinds of head tags as well. But anything up there will not show up in the web page itself. It'll show up either in like the like tab, or it'll provide like extra information about the page. Then the body tag will specifies like what shows up actually in the browser itself, and so that's like, you know, the big white part of the screen right now. And then the H1 tag I kind of talked about before. That's the heading tag, and that generally will show as like really big. And then the P tag is a paragraph tag. This sort of tells the browser, hey, this is just normal text. Display this as a block of text. So I ran through a bunch of those in like really quickly. And that's because honestly, like, I don't encourage you to memorize much of that. You'll pick them up over time, but rather than trying to memorize every single HTML tag, instead what I encourage you to do is look them up as you need them. So for example, if you wanted to learn more about like this title tag, you can go to, is it in here? Yeah. You can go to this page on Happy Coding, and you can go to here to learn more about it. But really what I've done here on this page is highlight like a few of the tags that I've already used. More importantly than being able to look at like this particular tutorial, what I encourage you to do is start using your favorite search engine, whether it's Google or DuckDuckGo or Bing or whatever, and finding information about tags that you aren't familiar with by reading the documentation. So I'm going to maybe just show that. So what if I type like HTML title tag? And you'll get a bunch of results because there's a ton of documentation and reference material and tutorials for HTML out there. I'll shout out a few. So W3 Schools is good. I recommend them. MDN is another one. So let's see, does MDN have one? Here, maybe. So the Mozilla Developer Network is another like really good reference page. And so I encourage you to do a search for any HTML tag you see in the wild or in any of my sort of tutorials, and do a search and read through the page for on W3 Schools or on MDN, and get more information that way. So I don't think my goal here is to teach you HTML. My goal is to teach you how to teach yourself HTML, if that makes sense. So I can read more about the title tag on W3 Schools and try it out and see what happens. From here, the next question that you might have is like, okay, I know how to make an H1 tag, and I know how to make a P tag, and I know how to search for those tags that I already have. How do I find more information about tags that I haven't seen yet? So the answer to that is you do the same thing. You search for them. So for example, if I don't know how to make, I don't know, let's see, like this list kind of thing, like what HTML tag should I use to make this list? I don't know. Let's find out. So it looks like a list. So maybe I'll say HTML list tag. And I'll look for, you know, the old reliables. So W3 Schools is a good example. Is MDN in here? Maybe not. You can throw in MDN. And yeah, the list element, sure. So whatever, I'll go to the W3 schools and sure, an unordered HTML list or an ordered HTML list looks like this is what I'm looking for. And here's an example of a combination of HTML tags that indicate that this is a list. And you can, either copy this code over or you can try it out in their little like standalone editor. So it looks like if I have a UL tag and then a bunch of LI tags, that creates the list. Okay, so I can maybe move this over to my my editor, and like I encourage you to read more about this if you're new to it. But I'm going to copy this over to my index.html page, maybe give myself some white space and just straight up paste it in. And ooh, I didn't realize this, but it looks like Replit like automatically formats your code, which is super cool. And then from here, I can kind of experiment. Like maybe I want this to be a list of like my favorite animals. So maybe I'll add a new p tag by typing the less than symbol and then the name of the tag, which in this case is a p tag, and then a greater than symbol, or opening and closing angle brackets. And looks like Replit is being helpful and like automatically providing that closing tag, so that's cool. And then I'll type my content. I'll say like, here are my favorite animals. And maybe I'll save that and run it. And okay, here are my favorite animals. Coffee, tea, milk. Those are not my favorite animals. Those aren't even animals, but I'll say, like cat, lizard, and I don't know, snail. I don't know if they're my favorite animals, but we'll go with that for now. And then I'll run this. And okay, now I see that my content over here is changing as a result of the code that I am writing over here. So I think I might leave it there. From here, I think you can find new tags by either reading through this sort of tutorial reference page or by just searching for them. So let's say I wanted to make an image. I wanted to add an image. There's an example down here on this page, or you can type HTML image tag into your favorite search engine and check out W3 Schools, check out MDN, check out some of these other links, and get more information about the syntax around how you use that tag, and then move that over to your editor and see what happens. And that's coding HTML. That's creating a web page. So I think I'm going to leave it there. Let me just real quick double check. Maybe the one thing I will call out that I haven't really called out yet is the fact that HTML tags can be nested. And that means that you can have HTML tags inside of other HTML tags. So for example, I have my top level HTML tag at the very top, and then inside of that, I have the head HTML tag, and then inside of that, I have a title tag. So it's kind of nesting. Title is inside of head, head is inside of HTML. So similarly, I have a body tag, which itself is inside of the HTML tag. And then I'll jump down here. Then I have a UL tag, which is an indicator that this is an unordered list, which I straight up stole from W3 Schools. And ooh, this is really cool. Replit actually, if you mouse over it, it also gives you some extra information. I did not know that ahead of time. That's really cool. Anyway, that's cool. But I have this body tag, and then inside of that I have the UL tag, and then inside of that I have the LI tag. So you can kind of think of it as like a hierarchy of tags where they kind of can contain each other. So cat is a list item inside of an unordered list inside of the body. And you'll see a lot of examples of that as we go on. So that's nesting tags. And I think from there, what I would encourage you to do is try to create your own web page and go look on either W3 Schools or MDN or just the general internet for other interesting tags that you can use. And from there, we'll learn more about things like styling it and making it interactive. But that's where I would start. with HTML tags. So I'm going to leave it there. Good luck, happy coding, and I'll see you in the next one.